Golf Digest presents Cure Your Slice Now with teaching professional Chuck Cook, the 1996 PGA Teacher of the Year and member of Golf Digest's instructional staff from Barton Creek Lakeside Golf Resort.
The first element we're going to discuss to balance your swing is your grip. As my mentor Harvey Pennick once told me, if you have a bad grip, you don't want a good swing. And what Harvey meant by that was the way you hold the club, since it was your only contact with the club, you would have to make a compensation in order to get the ball to go straight if you didn't have a good grip. And this is what Harvey meant by making a bad swing if you had a bad grip. So let's get started working on the most important part first, the grip. In taking the ideal grip, the first checkpoint that you want to have is your left thumb. If the top of the grip is 12 o'clock and the absolute side of the grip is 3 o'clock, the left thumb wants to be partway around to the back at the 130 position. The second checkpoint for the left-hand grip is so that the heel pad of the left hand is on top of the club or on top of the grip at the 12 o'clock position. The last checkpoint for the left hand is so that the space between the thumb and the first knuckle of the first finger is very close together. In fact, that should be close enough to actually insert a T and hold it there. When placing the right hand on the club, the right hand comes on facing the same direction that you want the ball to go. So it comes on facing the same direction as the club face, and this notch between the thumb pad and the heel pad slips right on this left thumb. So as you place this notch on this thumb, you just fold your fingers around there, keeping the hand square. Again, trying to have a very, very tight position between the thumb and first finger so that you could actually place a T in your grip on the right hand as well. This is the ideal grip for hitting the ball straight. If we take a look at Brad's grip, you'll notice that both hands are turned well to the right on the club. To help Brad get the correct grip, we're going to use the 2T grip. And what we're going to do is we're going to place a T in the gap between the thumb and forefinger of both hands, and you'll notice that with Brad's strong grip, both hands are turned to the right on the club. Well, what I'm going to ask Brad to do is just adjust those T's until they are sitting on top of the shaft. This will give Brad an ideal grip to help him start getting rid of that hook. My friend Don has a slicing problem. He has a 23 handicap, and his grip is where the problem starts. His hands are in a different position, and we want to bring them back to neutral. So what I'm going to ask Don to do is to do the same 2T drill that we just did. And what I'm going to ask him to do is to place the T in the web of his left hand and turn that hand on top of the club until the T is directly over the middle of the shaft. Then I'm going to ask him to place the T in the web of his right hand and adjust that hand more on top of the shaft until both T's are in line directly over the middle of the club. This is the best drill that I know for producing an ideal grip. Once you've gotten your best grip, getting your stance is the next most important thing. There are a lot of elements to stance, such as the width of your stance, the position of the ball, and your posture. But because your spine angle controls the path of your swing, how you position your spine at the beginning of your swing is critical to reducing either slices or hooks. The ideal setup position is one whereby when you take your stance, your spine is only tilted slightly to the right. People that hook the ball tend to lean too much to the right, getting their right shoulder too low. People that slice the ball tend to not lean enough to the right, having their left shoulder too low. The ideal position is one where the spine is tilted just slightly to the right with the left shoulder higher than the right. Obviously, people that curve the ball with either slices or hooks have a tendency to swing the club on the wrong direction when it makes impact. Hookers tend to swing too much to the right as they swing through the ball, and slicers tend to swing too much to the left. This is created by the stance that they use. Hookers have a tendency to have their right shoulder too low and their left shoulder too high like this. And as they make their swing around that setup, that tends to make the club swing too much to the right. To help Brad get rid of that problem, what we're going to do is to use the tripod drill. So Brad, what I'd like for you to do would be to go ahead and take your stance width, if you would please. Take the club and just stick it right in your belt buckle like that, standing straight up. Now just extend the shaft directly away from your belt buckle and then tip over like you're a tripod, keeping your legs straight. Now from there, merely flex your legs for balance. And you'll notice that that gives Brad the straight up spine position that we're looking for straight shots. Now looking at the slice side of the stance, slicers, because of their overly weak grip, tend to set up with their right shoulder higher than their left, or at least level with their left. This puts their spine in an outside-in swing position. Since the ideal position is one whereby the spine is tilted slightly to the right and the left shoulder is higher than the right, what we've had to do is to develop a drill that would help slicers get the correct position. The drill that we've come up with is called the wall drill. What you want to do is you want to find a wall or a door jamb or some straight line like this, set your whole left side of your body against that, and then feel like as you take your stance, your left shoulder and your whole left side will feel like it's a very tall line. Your right side then will feel like it's set underneath your left into the correct spinal position. Now that we're finished with the static portion of your golf swing, we're ready to begin the dynamic part. And just like in a track meet, how you start really is one of the major determinants to making a good golf swing. In the takeaway, we're going to really be talking about controlling the club face on the takeaway, since this is one of the biggest causes of both slices and hooks. What happens in the ideal takeaway is that the body begins to turn, and then as the right elbow folds, it starts to open the club face a little bit. When you reach the ideal halfway back position, the toe of the club is halfway between being straight up and being straight out. Hookers have a tendency to take the club back with the toe of the club being too much out. Slicers tend to take the club back with the toe of the club being either up or behind the heel. Once again, the ideal position for the takeaway is one whereby when the shaft is parallel to your toes, the toe of the club, or the face of the club, is halfway between toe up and toe out, more into this position. Hookers tend to take the club face back too closed or facing the ground too much. Slicers tend to fan the club open too much so that the toe of the club gets behind the heel. Since Brad is a hooker, what we're going to do is we're going to do an exercise that's going to help him get the ideal takeaway position. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an arrow on Brad's club, and I'm going to ask Brad, when he makes his takeaway, to try and point that arrow straight up in the sky into the ideal halfway back position. This will help Brad start to hit straighter shots. Don's tendency on the takeaway is to roll the club open to the inside. A drill that I've found to be very good in helping people to get the correct feeling on the backswing or the takeaway is to place a tee between his fingers on the side of the shaft, the front side of the shaft. And as he makes the takeaway, I want Don to feel like he keeps the tee pointed at the ground. This gets this club in a little bit of an overly closed position, but when he makes his swing at regular speed, the club will be more in the ideal position. This is a real good drill for getting the feel of the correct takeaway. While the top of the backswing is not exactly a static position, some things are going back while others are starting to go forward. How you use your shoulders to get the club to reach its farthest point is very important to your success in reducing both slices and hooks. So what we want to talk about in this segment is how to use your shoulders in the right direction and the right amount in order to produce good golf. The ideal shoulder turn at the top is one whereby the shoulders turn 90 degrees over the right leg. Slicers tend not to turn their shoulders at all, but rather to tilt their shoulders with the left shoulder going down and the right shoulder going high. Hookers tend to overturn their shoulders to where they're turned more than 90 degrees. The ideal position is 90 degrees over the right leg that looks like this. Slicers tend to move their shoulders in more of a tilting fashion, where the left shoulder goes down and the right shoulder goes up. What this does is this helps create that over-the-top slicing move. Hookers tend to turn correctly but tend to overturn, which brings the club too far into the ball from the inside out, helping produce that hook. The ideal turn is one whereby your shoulders turn 90 degrees over your right leg. To help Brad get that feeling, what I'm going to ask Brad to do is to take the club and lay it across your shoulders, if you will, please, Brad, folding your arms there. And as you go back, I'm going to move his shoulders correctly. It's going to be turning very level, but he's going to be moving behind the ball so that his shoulders are only turned 90 degrees, but he's over his right leg. This is the correct shoulder turn for ideal golf. A common problem that Don has, and a lot of people that slice have, is at the top of the backswing, their right shoulder goes up and their left shoulder goes down, rather than having the right shoulder go back and the left shoulder go around. I have a wonderful drill that was taught to me by Mike Dunaway, a former national long drive champion. It's called the jump rope drill. What you do is you take a jump rope or any kind of a rope and you just loop it around a bag stand, or in this case a shaft. Take your setup position in the same posture and practice pulling the rope back with your right shoulder. One of the things you want to watch for is to make sure that your head doesn't go forward as you do this, but just get the impression that the right shoulder is going back and not up. Starting your downswing is the most critical element in your swing in producing distance. Those that hit the ball a long distance, as they start down, they maintain their wrist cock all the way down to the hitting zone. For those of you who need to produce more distance, this is something that we're going to help you do. For those of you who have trouble controlling the distance of your shots, we're going to try and give you some exercises now that will keep you from overdoing this facet of your swing. The ideal starting down position is one whereby when you start down, the wrist cock that you have at the top of the swing is maintained at the same angle all the way down into the impact area. Amateurs, because they're trying to close an open club face caused by their grip, from the top of the backswing tend to uncock their wrist too early, trying to close the club face and get it square. People that hook the ball, because they're trying to keep the ball from going to the left, tend to actually increase the amount of wrist cock that they have starting the downswing in order to keep the ball from hooking, putting the club further behind their hands. So once again, the ideal position is one whereby the wrist cock that you have at the top of the swing is maintained all the way down into the impact zone. Slicers, because they're trying to close the club face, tend to release the club very early, trying to get the club face closed by impact. Hookers, because they're trying to keep the ball from going left, tend to keep the club cocked much, much longer into the downswing, which produces a lot of distance, but makes it very uncontrollable. Since Brad is trying to fight that problem, we're going to use a drill for Brad called point the finger. So what I'm going to ask Brad to do would be to take his setup and extend his right forefinger down the shaft, and as he makes the swing, try to keep his right forefinger pointed away from him throughout the backswing, the downswing, and to impact, trying to get rid of that down cocking that produces that inside-out hooking golf swing. One of the most common problems a person who slices the ball has is at the start of the downswing, in an effort to close the open club face that they created with the grip and the takeaway, is they start releasing the head of the club very early at the start of the downswing. This causes a tremendous loss of power, and at impact they arrive with their hands actually behind the ball, and the right wrist in the flat position and the left wrist in the scoop position. And an ideal position at impact, as we've said before, is one whereby the left wrist is flat and the right wrist is bent into this position. An excellent drill to try and get you to feel this late release of the club on the downswing is the chip punch drill. And what we do in that drill is that we start with our hands in the normal address position and then push them forward into impact. And again, as you push them forward, the butt of the club will go to your left leg, the left wrist to be flat, the right wrist to be bent. And then what we're going to ask you to do is to make some little chip shot swings, trying to keep your wrist in this position. So that as you go back, you're going to make a very short swing, come down. Because your hands are in front of the ball slightly, you'll hit down on the ball like that, and your hands should finish in the same position as they were at impact, with the left wrist flat and the right wrist bent. That drill would look like this. So from address to impact, just a little chip shot swing, trying to hit the ball just a very short distance. The moment of truth of any golf swing is what happens at impact. Getting the correct position at impact determines the success of your shots. If you're at the correct position at impact, your shots will go straighter whether you're a slicer or a hooker, and the right distance. So learning how to get to the right position at impact is critical to your success. The ideal impact position is one whereby at impact, the back of the left wrist is flat and the back of the right wrist is bent, creating a relatively straight line from the left shoulder all the way down to the head of the club, thereby giving you your widest arc. The other element of impact, the ideal impact, is such that your hips are turned or rotated at impact more in this position to allow your hands to be in this position. Most slicers, because of their weak grip and the open club face position, tend to come into impact more in the position with their hands like this, where the back of the left wrist is bent and the back of the right wrist is either flat or bowed, trying to close the club face. The other thing that they do is they tend to leave their lower body very, very square, trying to wait for that club face to close to help them get rid of that slice. Most hookers, on the other hand, in order to try and beat the hook, tend to get their hands too far forward at impact, where they're more into this position, forming a broken line like this. In order to allow their hands to be that way, they actually slide their hips forward and drive their legs forward and get too much lower body action to allow their hands to be in that position to try and fight the closed face hook. Once again, the ideal position is one whereby the back of the left wrist is flat, the back of the right wrist is bent, and the lower body is rotated. In talking about the ideal position at impact, what we're looking for is to get to a position where the left wrist is flat and the right wrist is bent and the body is rotated at impact. That's the position we're looking for. For people that hook the ball, what they have a tendency to do is they have a tendency to slide their hips forward and drive their knees forward, which pushes their hand too far forward at impact. The drill that we've designed for Brad is one whereby we placed a bucket between his legs, and this is to curb his tendency to want to drive his knees at the target and to make him feel like he rotates more through the middle of his body. Brad, would you like to go ahead and demonstrate hitting a shot?
Sure.
With that, please? As you can see, this made Brad's hips rotate instead of slide. People that tend to slice the ball have a twofold problem at impact. The first problem is that they're trying to square the club face with their right hand, and so as they come down, they reach for the ball with their right hand, with their right wrist getting flat like this, which breaks down the left wrist into a weak position. In order to wait for all this to happen, their lower body is absolutely static. They're very flat-footed, their lower body is very still, and all they're doing is hitting the ball with their hands. This really reduces power as well as makes it hard to control direction. A good drill that I know to try and create the optimum impact positions is the slap the hand drill. And what I'm going to ask Don to do is to simulate the correct position coming into the ball, which is the right elbow bent and in front of your hip, and the right wrist still cocked into that late release position. And then what I want him to do to square the club, or in this case to spank my hand, is to do it by rotating his hips. So we're going to start right here, right arm in front and bent, right wrist bent back, and just rotate the hips to spank my hand. You can see how much power that is. While the follow-through is really a result of what has happened before that, working on producing a good follow-through will often produce good positions on the downswing. In the ideal follow-through, we're going to be making the club go in a circle that's parallel to your target line. Hookers tend to swing a little bit to the right of that target line. Slicers tend to swing a little bit to the left, which affects their follow-through. So we're going to be working on your follow-through position to help you create the right positions on the downswing. The ideal follow-through position from impact is one where the club continues around, staying in front of the body, continuing going around into the follow-through. And as you do this, the club just stays in front of you and continues on around through this position all the way into a medium height position into the follow-through. Slicers who have a tendency to release the club early tend to swing to the left and tend to swing underneath this line, ending up in a very low finish over here like this. Whereas hookers, because they're trying to swing out to the right to keep the ball from going left, tend to swing away from their body and end up with a very high finish like this. So once again, the ideal position into the follow-through and finish is one where the club goes around your body, more over here in this position, and then ends up into a nice medium height finish here in the follow-through. The ideal follow-through would be one where after impact the club would continue swinging around in a circle, staying in front of your body as it turns. A good way to get this picture is to imagine that there is a wall running along your heel line. And as you follow through, what you would be trying to do would be trying to hit the wall with the whole club at one time. What hookers will have a tendency to do as they follow through would be to hit the wall with the head end of the club first, and what slicers would have a tendency to do would be to hit the wall with the butt end of the club first. Once again, the ideal position would be one whereby the whole club would hit the wall all at one time. This is the best way I know to get a perfect follow-through. A good way to practice the wall drill is to go to your driving range and put two shafts in the ground like this. I'm going to ask Brad to show you how we use this shaft to stop the hook. When you're setting the shafts up, what you'll notice is that they're aligned even with your heel line and just in front of your left foot. What you should do is to hit balls, and on the follow-through, practice hitting both shafts simultaneously with the whole club. Let me do that again. Practice hitting both shafts simultaneously. This will help you to get rid of your hook. Another drill that would help Brad to get rid of the overworking of his hips and legs in too much of a lateral fashion would be to actually have Brad hit some shots where he places a tee on his right foot in this manner, and then would actually practice hitting balls trying to keep the tee in the same position until impact and maybe even slightly beyond. Should he overwork his hips and legs on the downswing, then that tee would fall off, and this will help him to identify when he is overworking his hips and legs. We've given you a lot of information. The way we'd like to see you use this videotape is like a roadmap. One of the questions people often ask me is, how far can you take me as a student? And my proud response is that I've coached 3 U.S. Open champions. The next question they ask is, how fast can you get me there? And I always answer, I can teach as fast as you can learn. The fastest way for you to learn is to use this videotape like a roadmap. Start at the beginning. Start with the grip. Once you're satisfied with the changes you made in your grip, then go to the takeaway. Once you've done that part of it, then do the drills and exercises that help you get to the top of the swing. And then do the drills that carry you back down to impact and beyond. This is the quickest way that you can reach the next level in your golf. I hope that you've enjoyed watching this tape as much as we've enjoyed producing it. I hope to see you on the fairway soon.
Golf Digest video presentation of Cure Your Slice Now from the Golf Digest article by Chuck Cook and Roger Schiffman. thanks to Golf Digest Schools and the members and staff of Barton Creek Lakeside Golf Course in Spicewood, Texas. This video was produced by Primetime 2 Entertainment and Sports Programming.